welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made my very first blocking board. Yep, my first one. I confess I've never blocked anything before, and I've never made a blocking board, and this is all new to me. But I'm working on a pattern with these squares. I have 16 of them on here so far, and it just became clear that they needed to all be perfectly square for this to look its best. So here I am making progress. I'm making a board. It's not perfect. I'm not a carpenter, but it is working. And I'm going to show you my process and let you know what did work for me and what didn't work for me. And then you can make your own and block things. I've gathered some materials here, starting with this piece of 12 by 18 plywood. It's 3/4 inch thick. I feel like you're going to want a thick board, and I just scrapped this board, and it does have some holes in it already, but I'm going to just work around those holes because it's just a nice piece of wood. And this is, like I said, my first blocking board, so if I'm going to mess up, I'd rather mess up on a imperfect board that I scrapped for free, and then, you know, I can always make another one better the second time around when I learn some things, which I inevitably will. So other things that you're going to need include a drill, and you're going to want a drill bit the size of the hole you're making, and you're going to want corresponding size dowels. I got these wooden dowels. They're 3/16 of an inch. I got my 3/16 drill bit, and I was going to get stainless steel dowels, but the hardware store did not have any, so I went with the wood. And I'm gonna have to cut these too, of course. I don't have a saw, so we're gonna see how my little plant clippers work on this. And I have some sanding blocks for sanding down some rough edges. I have an awl to mark my holes, and a ruler and a pencil. And we're gonna start by making a grid on our board here. Now, maybe a yardstick would be better, but you can use a regular ruler too, as I will show you. Oh yes, and a drill block so that my holes are straight down. And this is going to come in handy because if you don't drill a straight hole, then your dowel is not going to stand up straight. So you want to have one of these to be really helpful. We're going to start by drawing a grid onto our board. Now get your ruler, and I'm just going to mark every inch up the side here, and then every inch going this way. You could also do a 1/2 inch, but I feel like 1 inch is better. If you have too many holes in the board, it's just going to end up making it weaker. So go ahead and mark every inch along each side and draw the grid. And now I'm going to do the horizontal lines, and even though my ruler isn't long enough, what you can do is mark the 1 inch mark along one of these vertical lines halfway through the board, and then line up this mark on this edge with that middle mark, and then continue from this mark to your 1 inch mark on this end. Make sure it lines up. And boom. Okay, so just continue making your grid. I don't know if you can see my grid, but there is a lightly drawn grid on my board, and we're going to make holes at every intersection. So I'm going to prep my holes by marking each one where I'm going to drill. That's quite a few here. Only one of these holes was really right on the mark for the new holes I'm going to make. Maybe I just get a bigger dowel for that one that is right where I need to make a hole. Alright, got all my holes punched. Now we're gonna drill some holes. I would love to do this outside, but it's raining for the next 5 days. So we're gonna have to do it inside, and I'm gonna need to find a couple of things. Okay, maybe that will work. I just have like a lid to a container here to catch the wood chips, and also so I don't accidentally drill onto my table. It's okay if I drill onto this lid, but we're going to avoid trying to drill through the board altogether. So, drill block. I don't want to go through the board all the way, so right before this little beveled spot gets to the top of the block, I'm going to stop drilling. And I'm back from drilling all of the holes, almost all of the holes. My battery died before I got to the last two, but that's okay. I figured I'd just take a break because that was a lot of drilling, and there's already a few things that I would have done differently that I'll go over. First tip is to definitely have an air filter if you're doing this inside. I got my air filter here. Obviously outside is ideal, but it's raining for the next 5 days here, so I just put my air filter here and worked. It gets really dusty. Just have some. I had the tray underneath that, and then the sanding really creates a lot of dust, and so I actually did go outside and got a little wet to get this sanded, and it's still like a little rough. I don't know if you can see like some of the wood chipped. Not really sure what to do about that. If anybody has any comments or advice, if I'm supposed to like even pre-drill the holes or maybe use a different bit or different type of wood, let me know, because it is still kind of rough. So another thing I would have done differently is maybe offset the holes closer to the edge, because I didn't make my first hole. I made it, you know, I made it 1 inch in and then made my first hole, but that kind of renders you an entire inch of the border unusable. Whereas if I had started my first hole like a 1/2 inch in, then I could have fit in a whole another row on the top and the side of holes and had more working space. So that's something to consider, is to make your first holes closer to the edge. The back looks okay. I did go through a little bit in some spots, but you know, like I said, I just scrapped this wood because I had a feeling it wasn't going to come out perfect, which it's definitely not perfect, but it's going to work. And I have these wooden dowels that I got, and they fit real nice and snug in there. See, it's pretty sturdy. So that's working out. I did, just out of curiosity, do one hole the next size up, and you can see that goes in much easier, but it is really loose and flimsy, and we don't want that. Like, the whole point of the wood is to make it nice and strong and sturdy, and maybe you can stack a whole bunch of crochet pieces on here. And I might sand this a little more, and I might switch these wood dowels to stainless steel at some point, because when you're blocking the crochet, you're going to need to use water. Generally, you're going to want to either spray or wet block, and I'm going to have to finish this wood off with some kind of varnish or oil, and it would just be ideal too if these were stainless steel so that they won't absorb the water, because you don't want them to rot or anything like that. And now I can use them to block my newest project. So let's try that. Right, here's my square. I kind of want to stretch this one out quite a bit. Here. That seems pretty good. How about that? So you want it to stretch out a little bit. And then the benefit of those long dowels, you know what? I probably am going to invest in those stainless steel ones. I can already feel the yarn kind of like catching on this wood. I feel like that's going to be kind of an issue here. But you know what? It's working so far. Alright, better yet, this 4-foot dowel. I'm going to try 8-inch pieces because it's 48 inches. So if I cut them in 8-inch pieces, I'm going to have 6 dowels rather than 4. Whoop. I'm just problem solving as I go here, you guys. I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, please feel free to comment better ways to do things because I'm just showing you my learning process. I just go for it. Use logic and do my best. And I think 8-inch dowels here might be better. And I think I can also maybe fit 2 of these squares on the board. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, this is where that one row would have been perfect. One more row would have been perfect. That's why I'm testing on this piece. So next time I do this, I can do it better. I wonder though, like, I know. Oh, you know what I can do? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I can just overlap them like that, right? Why not? Should work. Yeah. I'm using the spray blocking method here where you put down 1 square at a time and then you spray it with cold water and so that it is not soaked but that it is wet, and then you let it sit overnight to dry. I'm testing out the blocking board. Look, oh, it looks great. Look at those nice uniform squares. This is the willow square, by the way. I'm doing my next pattern with these squares, so stay tuned if you want to see what I'm making. I did not yet finish the board. It needs another sand, I think, a little more sanding, and then I'm going to coat it in some, I have spar urethane here. Anything really just to protect it from the moisture of the blocking because it's going to get wet, so you want to finish off the wood. I'm gonna wait until tomorrow to do that just because, like I said, it's raining outside and I definitely am not gonna spray that inside. So I'm just gonna test it out and see how well it works and then worry about finishing the coat later. Here's the proof that the blocking board works. This is my blocked square, and as you can see, it is a beautiful square shape, and it is nice and flat, and it is uniform with all of the other blocked squares. So that's great. This is an unblocked square right off the hook, and as you can see, it's a little bit wonkier, and the edges are kind of curling in, and they're a little wavy, and parts of it are not laying flat. So you can imagine that if you're going to be connecting a bunch of crochet squares, your final product is going to look much neater and more uniform if you have blocked squares versus wonky unblocked squares. I went back to the hardware store. I thought they must have these dowels. Okay, they're right here. Just 1/4 inch. 3/16. Yes. I just have to get these cut. I do want to take a moment now, though, to compare the new steel dowels I got from the hardware store. I got the 3/16 inch. They didn't have stainless steel, so I got it's a plated steel. I don't know how that really compares. Probably not as resistant to water, but you know what? That's what they had, and that's what I got. And I got 8-inch pieces cut, and they don't really go in the holes. So that's a really important note, that the 3/16 wooden dowels do go in the holes, but the 3/16 steel do not. So that's an interesting difference to note. And now I have some options that I can just keep using the wood dowels, or I can make my holes a little bit bigger. And I did make that one hole that is the next size up, and what do you know, it fits pretty good in there. It's a little bit wobbly, but you know, it works. That was the next size drill bit, which was 13/64, and it still feels a little too big for this dowel. So now I'm stuck between these two, one size not fitting and this next size up being a little too big. So maybe I will stick with the wood here. Another important comparison is a price point. So the wood was much cheaper. It was 89 cents for a 4-foot piece versus $9 for a 6-foot piece. And then I had to get it cut, and that was like 50 cents a cut. So the steel did cost more, which is kind of a bummer now that I can't really use it with this board unless I re-drill all the holes. So I have some decisions to make. I ended up doing another round of sanding and even drilling back into the holes with the 3/16 inch. So with the same one that I was using. And they're much cleaner now. I think it really needed that. And I did go and sand again. And I just about sanded that pencil grid off, which is great because I don't want that on my final product. And I might sand just a little bit more, but it's looking much better. And after drilling back into those holes, the wooden dowels do go in like a little bit better. And they are pretty sturdy. Comparatively, the steel dowel, 3/16 of an inch, still isn't really going in that hole. And that one hole that I made that is one size bigger, the 13/64 hole, you see, this like is wobbly in the next size up. Well, I'm thinking the wood actually is a really great option if you want something sturdy, which I do because I want to stack up my squares on here, and so you really want it to be sturdy at the top. And if it's a little bit wobbly like this, you won't get as even of results from the squares on the bottom and the squares on the top of your stack there. So you know, that's kind of a bummer that I just went and spent more money and got these dowels cut when I ended up liking the wood better. But you know what, I got to compare them for you, and I'll probably still use these for another board. So I'm really liking my board so far. It's not perfect. It needs a little bit more work and a varnish coat, which I'll get to, but I do want to note that this has taken quite a few hours of my time and about $60 at the hardware store, even though I scrapped the wood. Like, I did need like the sandpaper and some tools and varnish and dowels, and you know, it still ended up costing me some money and a bunch of time, and it is not perfect. So that's something to consider if you're thinking about making your own blocking board, that maybe it is worth it to buy one that's really nice and well done. Or maybe you have time and you want to learn and you want to do it yourself, and that's great too. So just something else to consider there. I finished off the board with that spar urethane, and it gives it like a really nice shiny finished look. I did 2 coats on the board and 1 coat on the dowels too, just to make it all water resistant, and I like the way it looks. It looks more finished. It does kind of bring out the chipped marks in the wood from drilling, and I'm not that happy with all those chip marks. Please let me know if you have any advice for me on how to prevent that, or if I just need to sand more, or how I could do that better. But let's recap on a few other things too that are working or not working. Some things that are definitely working are the size of the board. The 18 by 12 is a great size, especially the 3/4 thickness is a good thickness. I would not go any thinner than that. I also like the 1 inch spacing, although as mentioned before, I would have offset it to start the holes closer to the edge, and that would have allowed me a little more working room. So that was kind of an oops, but no big deal. The wooden dowels are working with the matching thickness dowel to drill bit hole. That is working, whereas it wasn't with the steel, and nor was the steel working with the bigger hole either. So that's something else I'm gonna have to problem solve, but the wooden dowels work and the actual blocking of the crochet also works, and that is really the most important thing here. Something else that may or may not be working for you is the amount of time, effort it's gonna take to make your own. You might think, oh, make your own is gonna be cheaper, but not necessarily if you have to go to the hardware store twice and buy some tools and some dowels and sandpaper and all that stuff. End up spending hours on it, but in the end you will probably have learned something and have invested a little more into your craft and your tools. And you know, I could make another one now because I have all those dowels and all the sandpaper and all this stuff and the drill and whatever. So in the end, you know, maybe you want to make your own, maybe you don't. I hope you guys like my tutorial. Let me know if you've ever made your own blocking board, or if you have any questions about my process or tips for me on how to improve my process. That'd be greatly appreciated. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and stay up to date on my newest projects, like this square project I have is coming up next.